2025 meeting of the Select Board. The following meeting is being recorded and broadcast through Tyngsborough Media. The meeting is available through our local cable access channels on Comcast and Verizon Fios, and is a live stream on our website, www.tyngsboroughma.gov. A recording of this meeting will be available through the video on demand portion of our website. Open meeting laws require that any member of the audience who intends on recording either video or audio so declare that now. After instruction from the State Fire Marshal and the Tyngsborough Fire Chief, in the event of an emergency, there is an exit directly across from me at the rear of the room and one to my left. At this point, I would ask all who are able to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we will start with board introductions. To my left.
Good evening, Ron Cohane.
Good evening, Jackie Gilfus.
Good evening, Eric Eldridge.
Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Good evening, Sean Walsh, Assistant Town Manager.
Good evening, David Andrews, Finance Director.
And I'm Ron Schneider. I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. Item number 2, the meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for August 18th, 2025.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for August 18th, 2025.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. Okay, this now is citizen and business time. If anyone wishes to address the board on matters of interest to the public that are not on our agenda, feel free to come up to the podium now. Seeing none. Mr. Loisel has gratefully offered to hold off his town manager's report until we address item 5A, which is the request for plowing services for Progress Ave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ashley Tracy from New England Transit Sales is here. If you want Ashley to take a seat at this table, I'm going to give a quick introduction, but then the board will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, as the board will likely remember, DPW Superintendent Jake Zwicker and I met with the Select Board last winter to talk about our efforts to ensure that the town was only plowing and maintaining streets that were accepted public ways as governed by Massachusetts general laws. The discussion at the time was held at the recommendation of Town Council following a review of the Highway Division's winter operations as a part of our efforts to implement the then recently adopted DPW Act. During this process, we were made aware of several areas that received snow plowing and standing services that were not entitled to them under the law. Included in that list was Progress Ave. At this board's meeting on January 6, 2025, it voted to direct me to terminate plowing and standing services effective July 1st, 2025, to ensure that the impacted property owners had time to get a new vendor on board. There is no evidence or claim that the town has ever physically maintained or repaired the road, only provided snow services. A little bit of background on how the board came to that decision. Under Mass General Law, municipalities are generally prohibited from using public funds for private gain on private land or facilities. The only exception is where the Select Board determines that such use of public funds actually serves the public good. Even then, it could be subject to litigation if a group of taxpayers wanted to challenge the use of the funds. Last winter, my office was made aware that for the last 20 or so years, we had been sanding and plowing Progress Ave, which was approved as a subdivision by the Planning Board back in 1997, but never accepted as a public way. On the application to the Planning Board at the time, the purpose of the application was for, quote, Cummings Industrial Park. Since its approval and ultimate construction, the subdivision has been subdivided and now has 22 lots owned by varying owners. The area is an industrial complex similar to West Tech Drive, Potash Hill, and Industrial Drive. Those 3 complexes are all private and do not receive plowing or sanding services. It is unclear why we started plowing and sanding the road, but we've been doing it since at least 1999. Town Council had advised us at the time that continuing to plow a private way was not lawful, but the town certainly had to consider the practical implications of implementing a dramatic change without prior notice. That is how we came to the decision that we'd finish out the season and then not continue the services in the new fiscal year, which, for those not familiar, started on July 1st. Letters to that effect, an example is attached to the memo, were sent to all property owners on Progress Ave on January 13th, 2025. The letter indicated that as of July 1, the town would no longer provide plowing services. This gave impacted property owners at least 8 months to hire a new snowplow vendor. Between January and June 1st, we did not hear back from any property owners outlining concerns or requesting assistance. On July 9th, 2025, I was contacted by Ms. Tracy, who now serves as general counsel to New England Transit Sales, which is a business on Progress Ave. Mr. Zwicker and I met with Ashley on July 23rd, and she had subsequent conversations with town council to further explore the situation. Following both meetings, Ms. Tracy has indicated that she intends to utilize the citizens petition process to seek the acceptance of Progress Ave as a public way. In the meantime, the request before the board tonight is that the town consider plowing and sanding for 1 additional year while she navigates this process. The process involves her getting the number of signatures that are required, which for an annual is 10. It would then have to be filed with the planning board, which makes a recommendation. The select board has to lay out the bounds. Mark, you've done this a few times. And then it would go to town meeting. So there's no guarantee that that process will be successful. Since the termination of the plowing was at the discretion, or the direction rather, of the board, I did not feel it was appropriate for me to make the decision alone. I've consulted counsel and his opinion remains unchanged. The road is not an accepted road and should not be plowed by the town. Further, the town has provided the impacted property owners ample time to bring a plow vendor on board. My recommendation is that the town not grant the extension. However, the DPW and I are prepared to implement any decision that the board decides to make this evening.
Greetings.
Good evening.
Would you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ashley Tracy. I am the General Counsel of New England Transit Sales.
If you want to speak, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you for
please.
your time. So as background, I came into my role in June of 2025 and learned quickly thereafter that this had become an issue, that the plowing was going to be an issue. I immediately, as soon as I learned of it, and I recognized that the notice had been sent, notice was sent out to all the properties in the winter. As soon as I learned of the issue and what I believe would be the implications, meaning the steps that were going to have to be taken, I immediately began taking steps to try to deal with this issue. And so Mr. Roselle was kind enough to give me his time so I could understand how we got here. One of the things, and in speaking with town council as well, one of the things became clear was that I was going to have to get in touch with multiple property owners, obviously, and what the process was going to be. And I have, in fact, taken those steps. The issue is, one of the issues that we have beyond, it is the property owners that I've spoken to always believed that this was a public way. They always understood it to be because of certain things that, and expectations that have been set into place for them, including drainage requirements, water requirements, all of the requirements that were consistent with and in compliance with the town. So it was somewhat surprising when they found out that after many, many years, it was not considered a public way. One of the issues that we are having is it is not just merely getting a vendor. So as way of background, your Progress Ave is, I believe, the only area zoned for school buses because they're diesel, because of the noise, all of that. There's only certain zoning that buses can be there. So one of the issues that we have is not only finding a vendor, but finding a vendor that is going to, that is available to and an agreement of being in compliance with your school bus contract to make sure that your students are getting to school on time and in compliance with their contract. The issue, the vendor, the school bus vendor does not own the property. So because it was not understood what the issue was, that was never relayed to the vendor. An extension on that contract was extended in June, in which there was no discussion about this. So we are now, not only we're taking two steps, which is one, we believe that was intended, and there have been property owners who have had conversations with Mr. Erickson about the steps that he was taking to try to get it in compliance, and why the final step was not taken, which was actually getting the approval. But on top of that, we now have to try to coordinate multiple property owners into essentially a condo association, if you will, to then agree to, and on top of that, get a vendor who is going to ultimately create a priority so that your school buses can be available to deliver students and not have to delay school or cancel school by 6:30 in the morning, which is what your current contract requires. And so for this reason, we have, given that I certainly understand what the process is, and we are making our best efforts to do that, and we have made multiple steps in that direction. What I'm asking is, my concern is the next special town meeting, the only way to get on would be the next special town meeting, which would be in October, which is cutting it very, very close for our requirements. So I'm asking, given there is a level of public interest, to continue to plow this road while we do comply with the requirements that the town obviously wants us to implement. And if it is not permitted, and if it's not approved, then we will go forward and continue again in that second tract, as we're doing 2 tracks at the same time, to become a real estate, or to become essentially an association, and get a vendor, and get dues enough to get a priority contract with a vendor. So that is my request.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I will open it up to the board. Why don't we start with Mr. Cohen?
Well, we voted on this before because it's based on our lawyer's recommendation, is that we really shouldn't be using, public funds for private businesses. It sounds like our lawyer has not changed that stance. Actually, he has restated that stance. I think, as we know, it's pretty dangerous setting precedent like this, saying that we're going to plow a road that, now that we know it's not a public way, now we would be telling everybody else that, it's possible they could have the town plow different parts of their property also. There's a few that we know of, that pop up every now and then. This is just something that just pops up every now and then. But it's not a public way. It's not approved by the town. Our lawyer clearly states that we should not be doing it. We shouldn't be using public funds for this. So I go with our last vote that we should not be plowing this roadway.
Person Gilchrist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have some logistical, tactical questions, just because you bringing up the thing about the school buses
Yes.
is new information or new
Yes.
context that I think I need to work through a little bit.
Sure.
So this is probably a question for Colin more than
Sure.
you, but so in that area, I'm just looking at a map, that's why I opened my computer. So Progress Ave is like a loop off of Cummings Road, and then there's a couple of streets that are off of Progress. Are there any residences in any of that area, Progress Ave or any of the streets off of it?
Not part of that subdivision. It's
Okay.
strictly industrial.
Could you help me understand
Sure.
what the deal is with the school buses?
Sure.
It's that
Why would a school bus need to go there?
It's because that's where so as Ms. Tracy pointed out, Tyngsborough doesn't own its own buses.
Sure.
Like many communities, we have a contract. Ours is with a company called D-Bus. D-Bus houses their buses, so they start and end their day on Progress Ave, in a lot that, as she indicated, they rent from one of the landowners.
And-
So they're not bringing children there, but they have to leave there by 6:30 in the morning.
So, and my argument is, and just by way of background, I used to train on 30B. That was my job at the Inspector General's office. That's why I was like, but there's a 30B issue. When you do the contract for a bus contract, right, you have to bid it, much like any other. One of the things that is required in the bids and in this particular bus contract is there is an incentive to have your buses in Tyngsborough, specifically because it reduces costs on fuel and labor, right? So it's gonna bring the contract down, the cost for the town down. And so the only place to do that is Progress Ave. So because of, they're really loud, they beep really loudly. If I'm not sure if you've listened to a bus, but they beep really loudly because I hear them all day. And they, and the fumes are not great. So obviously the zoning is very particular for this town, for this area. So my argument is, while I recognize that traditionally this is not, there is no public service, right? And one of the things that my argument is you are getting a public service. I recognize what the town is, what the attorney has said because of the statute. And what the argument will be is there's a public service that is being provided to the town by ensuring that those buses are getting out, as opposed to relying on a vendor hopefully getting there and getting them out at 6:30. And that's why I would say that in this situation, I would believe that there is at least a better argument than if we were just a bunch of businesses who didn't have anything that was tied publicly at all. That gives us a potential to make a better argument for why it should be considered a public way.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you for that context.
Yes, yep.
Have we heard from D-Bus about their concerns?
No, and I do want to point out that I think watching both Ms. Tracy and Mr. Costa in a courtroom would probably be entertaining because they're formidable opponents. Adam has a different perspective. Adam and Ms. Tracy talked through this 30B issue, and Adam's perspective, just for the record, is that there is no 30B issue. They rent the lot from a landowner. The landowner, as the landlord, is responsible for making sure that they can meet the obligations of the contract.
Right.
Noted, though, on her arguments, and her and Adam have talked those through.
And you aren't, the business that you represent is not the owner of that lot, correct?
No, no.
It's another business that's.
Well, I should say, it's a leaseholder there, it's a subdivision of us. So it's not Nets lease, it's Nets leasing versus Nets, it's
Okay.
subsidiaries, so.
Confusing also, they sell primarily branded
Yeah,
buses,
so it's
so
like,
they're all in the bus
there's a lot of things, yes.
business.
Okay. Just trying to understand if you are here representing the interest of your client
No.
or the neighborhood, the
The
subdivision.
clients, so
Complicated.
it is complicated because when I came in, I was the only person that I knew that even raised it. That's why I said, I was like, what is going on and has anyone raised this before and what is the rest of the people doing? And so I was coming in from like, hey, my perspective is I would like the town to see it as a public way, both because of its reliance and in a variety of ways, but also there is a public service. And so my argument is more recognizing, again, that I don't represent D, but there is, in terms of arguments, that what stands Progress Ave apart from other sort of commercial land is that there's some service being provided to the citizens of Tyngsborough, which is, which I would argue gives maybe a better argument for why it should be recognized.
Yeah. And,
Or differentiated from other commercial property developments.
and that was the language somewhere in here about, I think Jake had said that we wouldn't, I'm trying to find it, but now I don't know, that we wouldn't be able, or we shouldn't plow a non-public way unless we could justify that there was a public service needed. to do
Unless you
that.
can justify that it benefits the public good.
Benefits the public good. Thank you for that language.
And that was not Jake, that's just the general
That's-
principle around using public funds.
Got it, okay.
Jake is not a lawyer.
Okay, thank you. I think
Yep,
that's the
sure.
questions I have.
Sure.
Really?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was the chair at the time that this came up, and this came up actually earlier than when we addressed it in January. Because we got it on the agenda at the beginning of January, and at that time, there was the possibility that we were going to stop plowing at that point in time because there was a risk to the town. We were setting a precedent by doing that, and the board, and I think justly so, said, we're not going to do it in the middle of winter. We're going to go through and give the land owners in that road ample opportunity to address it the following year.
Sure.
We went through and finished out the winter and continued to plow and sand in there. I think that, I agree with Select Person Cohen in that, one, I still have the exact same concerns about the precedent that it sets, using public funds. While I'm certainly sympathetic to the buses and making sure that the kids are taken care of, correct me if I'm wrong, but the town has no obligation to make sure that that road is plowed by 6:30 in the morning so that the bus can get out, whether it's a public way or not.
Correct. The 6:30 is that the contract, as in every other community, requires the bus vendor be able to get out. We don't have a contract with the highway department, I think is what you're getting at, saying they have to do.
The other concern I would have is, I think that there are ample plow services that you can contract with who will give you that stipulation, and we'll go through and say, we'll have it done and taken care of during that period of time. I'm totally on board with the owners of that property going through the proper process to get the road as a public way. It actually is in the benefit of the town if the road meets the criteria to being a public way. If it doesn't, then we don't want to accept it because we're taking on those things. But it's in our benefit because we get additional money from the state for each mile of public way. So while I certainly am sympathetic to the timing and you're coming onto this, I think that we've given ample amount of time for the landowners to address the issue. I think that there is a perfectly rational solution and reasonable solution, and that those folks can contract someone to go through and plow that road until such time as it is a public way. There is a process that it has to go through. I don't know if it'll be a year. I don't know how long it will take. But that, it does have to follow that process.
Right.
And I think if we were to go through and say, we can do it with this, we have at least 3+ industrial complex that would all be sitting there doing the exact same thing and say, oh,
Right.
me too. So I am not in favor of granting any extension at this point in time. I think we address the issue in a rational and reasonable way. I do agree with, Colin when he said council hasn't changed his mind, and I think it's a valid reason. If there's something where there's a disagreement, I think that there's mechanisms to address that. But I am sympathetic to the situation, and I totally understand. But I think that there are better solutions than having the town continue to pave and sand that road. So
Thank you.
that's my thoughts.
My comments or questions would be, what has happened today? So I'm assuming you've gone down 2 parallel paths.
Yes.
There's the approval, and then there's the finding of a contractor to plow this
Yes.
development.
And
What's happened with?
so, I'm sorry, I interrupted. I talked over you, I apologize.
No,
Good.
no need to apologize. I'm just curious how you are in that process. We know that there's one particular process for the approval, and
Right.
that's getting signatures and whatnot, but
Right.
where are you with the finding a contractor?
So as of today, I have not found anybody who can guarantee or is willing to guarantee a 6:30, to get out at 6:30. They don't want to take that liability on. And you're absolutely right. It's not that it is impossible. I'm sure it is. It's just I haven't found anybody yet. And so, and I do appreciate that our delay is not your emergency. So, and I mean that. It's not lost on me that regardless of when I got involved, here we are. So there have been calls made. One of the things that we are running into is in order to get it, as I understand it, approved as a public way, is making sure our engineering is up. Well, the engineering firm that did the engineering for the road is no longer in place. So now we have to hire, and that's why I say it's not that we're not trying to, but we have to hire and collect everybody to pitch in, to hire, to have new engineering done, to then get this path in place that would Traditionally, we would not have expected it to be like that. But that's a long way of answering your question, which is, I have made calls. We have yet to be able to find a vendor who would guarantee that. And so that just is what it is at this point.
Any other comments from anyone on the board?
Just thinking about the timeline that you were just describing.
Yes.
Because one of the notes that I made to myself was, how realistic is it that this could be completed before when the October town meeting would be?
Right.
And it sounds like there's this additional complexity about the engineer now also.
Yes.
So even if theoretically you had the 10 signatures right now, and you were scheduled to go to planning board, which I think, when is the planning board next meeting? At some point.
They meet the second and fourth Thursdays.
And so they would have to go first, and then we would go.
Yeah, and to be clear, when I
Just like
said
timing is
10,
tight,
when
yeah.
I said 10 signatures, that's for an annual town meeting.
Right.
Any resident at any time can call a special town meeting, whether we were planning one or not, with 100 signatures. So if you wait till
Even
May,
off
it's
cycle.
10. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I know that you have a special town meeting in October, and that was really the goal. It's like, all right, I know there's a special town meeting that comes up. Will we have the timeline? And that was one of the things that I had talked to town council about, is let's play this backwards.
Yeah.
Where I am here in August, I think it was, maybe I talked to him the end of July or beginning of August, like, let's play it backwards. He said the timing's gonna be really tight to get it in front of the board, and then get it in front of the planning board, and then get to the selectmen at the
Well,
same
I
time.
think
Or
based
select
on
people,
what
I'm sorry.
Colin just said, I mean, as of right now,
Yeah.
there's no, there aren't any warrant articles
Right.
expected for the October town meeting, and so theoretically, we will not be having an October special town meeting.
Okay.
Which does mean that if you were to do the 100 signatures, then
You could call
we
it
could
whenever.
do it in
Right.
November or
Right.
December.
Okay.
Like, you wouldn't have to wait necessarily all the way to May.
Yep,
It's still time consuming, right?
Is that true?
It is true. So if we were having in October, it's a special anyway. So even if we were planning one on, I think it would have been October 22nd, the request would have required 100 signatures because it's a special town meeting.
Right.
Now, we have no planned articles, so we have no plans to call a town meeting. However, in an open town meeting form of government, any resident, if they get 100 certified signatures
Of residents?
of voters in the
Oh, yeah.
town, can force the board to call a special town meeting. So that could happen in November, that could happen in December, January, February, etc. The timing is that, as you know this is unique in that typically the acceptance of a street is brought forward by a town department, i.e. the planning board at the end of a subdivision. And so we have a little bit better control on the timelines. The first step would be getting the signed citizens petition, but then there are statutory timelines where it has to be filed in the town clerk's office. Within a certain amount of time, the planning board has to have a public hearing. They have to report out back to the select board. You have to declare your intent to lay out the way. You have to do 2 steps because it's Massachusetts. And then you have to have a second meeting where you actually lay out the metes and bounds. So that process would start as soon as the town clerk's office certifies 100 signatures. The convenient piece to that is because we weren't expecting a town meeting, based on the timeline, we could work to identify a town meeting date that worked with the statutory timelines for street acceptance.
Mr. Chair, I got one quick question. So, in our bylaws, we stated, the fall town meeting was gonna be October, we had a set time,
Mhm.
right? And I do understand that in order for a citizen's petition, it had to be 100 signatures. If it doesn't follow our normal town meeting schedule, is it still 100 signatures, or is it more?
It's still 100.
It's still, okay. Thank you.
I think I just raised that because you're not in the confines of get it by October or May.
right.
So I don't know that it doesn't
Sure.
solve the problem.
Yes, no,
but,
I know.
I think it does take a little bit of pressure off, I hope.
Yes.
But either way, I mean, we do live in New England. I mean, you gotta have services lined
Right.
up
Absolutely.
well in advance.
And as I said, it's,
Excuse me. And so, I really think, even though they do go to the, town meeting aspect, they still gotta get somebody lined up to do this.
Sure.
just in case it happens, right? And the thing that's kind of gnawing at me too is that, the bus has gotta be out at 6:30, I guess we kinda knew that, so our town has just been making an exception and going there and probably plowing a lot faster to make sure the school buses can get out.
Well, you also, I mean, the other,
Which I understand, but, they don't have a contract with us either, and again, that's putting them at risk also.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
the buses are not going to be able to just get out and get on unpaved roads. The reality is if the roads, not just the road to Progress getting in and out, if the roads are not safe, the majority of the roads, then they don't open school and they have delays. So it's not like this is a scenario where the buses need to get out, there's a foot of snow and we make sure that they get there till 6:30. You're gonna have the same issues, it's not just a matter of getting to that one road. We have to get the majority of the roads, and if all the roads are in that type of situation, it won't matter if they can get to the buses, because they're not gonna have school anyway, it's a safety issue.
Or a delay for several hours.
So while I understand, the need to get to there, and it can't be that every other road is fine, but Progress Ave is a mess, I totally understand that, but it's not a situation where they go to Progress Ave first, make sure the buses can get out, and then, don't worry about the other roads, we'll get to those when we get to them. They're not gonna have school anyway, right? And you know that.
Of course I know that, but obviously they're making sure they hit Progress Ave at a certain time frame, because it was my only point, right? But whatever the case is, I mean, you're gonna have to get a plow service anyway. I can't imagine, you can't get a plow service, maybe not one at the price that you like, but I'm sure you can get a plow service to plow your road. There's a lot of places there's a lot of private businesses in town that have their roads plowed all the time, so. I still feel that, I'm just gonna go by our last vote, unless, we'll see how this flies. It's up to everybody else.
Okay. So, I guess we have two directions we could go tonight. We could deny the request, or we can direct the town to continue to plow Progress Avenue for an additional year ending on July 1st, 2026, because the board finds that it does serve a public good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Because this is not a public hearing,
yes?
can the person in the audience who would like to speak, are they authorized to speak? I'm not sure.
Oh, she is with another company on Progress Ave, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay, yeah. I don't know procedurally if that's allowed.
Procedurally, it generally is not allowed.
I just have a few comments, and
Yep.
if you want to speak to them, you can, Ashley. They're just a few
It's up to you.
challenges to what is.
You know what, come on,
Thank
come on,
you.
and we'll keep it brief. That's okay. That was for public time.
That's it.
Hi, so I'm Christine Delepsky, and I'm the General Manager of CNC Machine at 78 Progress Ave. And so, with all due respect, I would like to challenge a couple things that were said today at the hearing, such as no work has actually been done on Progress Ave, which is not accurate because we had a drain grate right at the bottom of our business that was actually collapsing in. One of my employees proceeded to call the town, in which the town did come out and fix the spaces in the road in which the grate was collapsing for safety issues. As far as the as-is, Progress Ave was actually built to spec to be accepted as a public way from 100-foot distances from the road, and so many trees left up and spaces between each business. So it is if we could get that as is, we would see that it was built to your specifications. So I just want to clear that last year there was actually work done by the town on Progress Ave. The other part that I would like to bring up is Walter Erickson for a while with Jim, I don't remember his last name, I apologize, had owned that septic station in which they were paying for the septic to be pumped out. That is now owned by the town of Tyngsborough. So therefore, for the town to access that septic substation, there would have to be plowing from either direction at least to that point, I would presume, in order for you to maintain the septic. So those are just a few things that I wanted to challenge that were not brought up. You're welcome.
Do we need to make a motion on this?
Either that or we take no action and then their previous vote, however you guys want to do it.
Yes, if you're going to reverse the decision you made in January, I would need a motion, just because the last time I acted was based on a motion. If you don't make a motion tonight, then it just stays status quo. So I think a motion either way would be cleaner, just so that I can direct the DPW one way or another.
Mr. Eldridge?
Mr. Chair, I move that we deny the request as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It carries 4-0-0.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you
Yeah.
again.
All right. Town manager's report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may have noticed, we've completed a significant media upgrade here in the community room. With funding from previously approved capital PEG funding, we've upgraded the audio system. This phase of the work included new wireless microphones, which are in front of you this evening, which we believe will address the crackling issue that we sometimes had with the old wired system, as well as the installation of new ceiling-mounted speakers. You may remember we used to rely on these old school ones that are mounted in the wall, which did not really deliver the sound. Additionally, the new software allows this room to be fully remote capable. We're still tweaking some of the settings, so it's not live just yet, but that will eliminate the need for us to set up an owl anytime we want to have a remote meeting. It will directly feed in the video feed from these cameras to the online meeting platform like Google Meets, and it will bring back into the room any audio or video from whoever is remote. So a lot of big upgrades there. And then finally, as you can see behind the board, we've installed 2 brand new TVs which will broadcast the same meeting material that you're used to seeing on the projector. The projector works great for the select board's viewing, but oftentimes was hard to view from the audience. The final phase of this project will commence in the next few weeks, and we'll see audio and visual upgrades in meeting room 1, which also doubles as the kitchen here. A big thank you to Roni for coordinating this work. As the board is aware, last week the Tyngsborough Police Department, with support from more than a dozen other law enforcement agencies from across the Commonwealth, handled a missing person search off Wilson Way. I wanted to take a minute to share our appreciation to the Tyngsborough Police Department personnel under the leadership of Chief Woods, as well as the countless other officers from agencies as far away as Natick who responded to help. Thank you to resources from the Massachusetts State Police, Massachusetts Environmental Police, NEMLEC, the Middlesex County Sheriff's Office, and canine officers from across the region. The search included drones, foot patrols, aerial searches, ATVs, bicycle patrols, canines, as well as dive teams. The Tyngsborough Fire Department and the Massachusetts Division of Fire Services also staged at the scene to provide support and additional resources. Assistant Town Manager Walsh and I visited the command center and are incredibly appreciative of the work of everyone involved. I'm happy to share that while a bulk of the search was called off early that evening, we were able to locate the missing individual the following morning. He was found safe. There was a lot of comments about this, so just a reminder, this was a search for a missing, endangered person. There was never any risk to the community, and that's why we didn't lock down schools or anything of that nature. A big shout out to our Rec Director Allison Page and the Recreation Committee, as well as the dozens of volunteers who made the 2025 Party by the Bridge a tremendous success. I spent the morning at the gate welcoming guests with Ms. Coughlin, and the spirits were high, the food was good, and the weather was perfect. I am amazed at the work that goes into planning this huge event and the positive impact that it has on our community. We are entering week 4 of the 2nd Annual Civic Leadership Academy. We have 10 residents enrolled this year, and so far they've learned about general administration, information technology, media, DPW, and the fire department. This week they'll meet with the Tyngsborough Public Schools and get a tour of the new middle school. Again, thanks to Roni for coordinating and for all the departments for participating. They've all dove headfirst into this. They've got very interactive presentations, and so far the feedback from our participants has been very positive. Earlier today, I participated in a demonstration with Republic Services for a new feature that they're rolling out in Tyngsborough called Track My Truck. This new program will allow residents to follow along the trash pickup and see when the route is starting, when the route is complete, and if there are delays. It will also send alerts if service cannot be completed for any reason, whether it's because your barrel wasn't on the curb, it was overflowing, or whatever the reason is. The program will also provide real-time info about the pickup schedule for both trash and recycling. They're still ironing out some of the bugs, but you can see the platform by going to republicservices.com and clicking the Track My Truck. There are some kinks as you scroll through it, but they're working on fixing those. So we'll do a little bit more advertising once they fix that, but for now I just wanted to note that it is an option. And a reminder that September is the American Library Association's Library Card Sign-Up Month. You can celebrate here at the Tyngsborough Public Library by visiting them in person or by visiting tinglib.org/card to get yours today. With a library card, you can do much more than just check out books. You can borrow museum passes, musical instruments, and tools. You can also attend engaging programming like book clubs, lectures, and arts and crafts. Whether you're a student, job seeker, entrepreneur, or lifelong learner, a library card is a smart way to stay connected with your community. I get $5 from the library every time I read there.
You get one
Advertisement.
free rental of a book.
All right, on a staffing front, the town of Chelmsford is currently seeking to hire a full-time animal control officer. As you might know, the town of Tyngsborough has benefited from an intermunicipal agreement for 4 years now that sees Tyngsborough pay for half of the ACO's base salary, while Chelmsford pays for the remainder, as well as equipment, training, and personnel benefits. The current ACO has accepted a position as an ACO in Carlisle, and so Chelmsford is currently seeking to fill that position. Fortunately, Officer CNC is still serving in that role while the search for his replacement is ongoing. Last week, we made a conditional offer to a new full-time dispatcher. The individual would come to us from a different 911 call center with years of dispatch experience in settings as large as Lowell and in smaller communities. With my approval, we've transitioned this part-time communication specialist position into a full-time one to reduce the yearly overtime expenses that we've been seeing. As this board is incredibly familiar in analyzing prior trends, we've overspent the overtime budget, I think, every year for at least the last 5 years. We know of several planned FML leave situations and departures early next year. So it is our belief, after running a bunch of scenarios, that by offsetting the cost using the existing untouched budget for a part-time person and reducing what we expect to spend on overtime, that it will be at least budget neutral. Right now, we operate with 7 full-time communication specialists, and so anytime there's an absence, it requires that we fill that shift with overtime. So you can imagine that particularly in the summer months, that becomes incredibly challenging. The other positive is that if we were to hire a part-time dispatcher, generally you don't get somebody who's already a certified dispatcher, so you end up spending even more money on overtime training them. This individual will require a modified onboarding process, but is otherwise a plug-and-play candidate. The demolition of 180 Lakeview Ave is slightly behind schedule due to delays getting National Grid to cap the gas line. I don't expect that this will cause significant delays, but we're probably 2 or 3 weeks behind at this point. I will provide an update once National Grid has cleared us to cap the gas line. I'm excited to share that we're working with the Middlesex 3 Coalition to plan a What's Happening in Tyngsborough meeting for November or December of this year. For those who aren't familiar, the Middlesex 3 Coalition is an economic development group that focuses on advancing economic development along the Route 3 corridor. Tyngsborough has been a member of Middlesex 3 for at least 10 years. The event will be hosted at the 440 Plaza by Sam Park and will feature a presentation by his company on the updates to that plaza. We'll also invite the developers at 93 Kendall Road, and we'll have a broad conversation about things that are going well here in Tyngsborough and our surrounding communities. Once we finalize a date, I'll be sure to let the board know so you can participate if you're able. Last week, we rejected the bids on the 2025 Roads Phase 2 project, which came in higher than we budgeted. Our engineering division has spent the last week reworking the bid and modifying the scope, and I anticipate that we'll release a revised IFB this week so that an award can be made before the season ends. And then just a few reminders on upcoming events. The Council on Aging is excited to announce that Evening Bingo is back. Join us on Wednesday, September 10th for bingo at the Center for Active Living. Doors open at 5:30 p.m. and the game starts promptly at 6:30. The Fall Health and Safety Fair will take place on Saturday, September 27th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Tyngsborough Elementary School. The annual Friends of the Tyngsborough Public Library book sale will take place on October 4th, 2025 from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. right here in the community room. You can donate books to the book sale at the library through October 2nd. And the Tyngsborough Public Library is planning an oral history day on Saturday, February 21st, 2026 from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That'll be at the library, and the purpose is to collect oral histories related to the Winslow School. They'll be releasing more details in the coming months, but save the date. This project was funded by the Community Preservation Committee and town meeting at the last fall town meeting.
The Opioid Task Force is hosting the Tyngsborough Light the Night Recovery and Remembrance Vigil on Wednesday, September 17th, next week at 6 p.m. at Old Town Hall. The event will honor those we've lost in the battle with substance abuse, support those that are in recovery, and connect folks with others that are on the path to healing. The event is open to all, will feature music, guest speakers, and much more next week. Thank you.
We'll open the board for questions. Select Person Cohen.
No questions.
Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you for the report, lots of things there. So much so that it was like twice the length of the original draft that I read in preparation for this meeting. So much happening, very dynamic. Thank you for your hard work.
Select Person Eldridge.
One question, so the rejected bids for the road Phase 2 project, we're hoping that there's no impact on those items. Can you remind folks which roads are?
Yes, this is the full depth reclamation project for 2025, which is Bridget, Elm, Lincoln, that whole area over there. It wasn't so dramatically out of the budget that we don't think we'll still be able to complete the scope. What the engineering division has done is kind of retweaked some of the specifications, particularly around sidewalks. If we can, we try to replace the curbing, for instance, on a project. If we don't need to, which is what we've looked at here, we can reduce it, which generally saves some expenses.
Thank you for that clarification. The only other comment on the missing person, the police department and multiple police departments. Just to remind folks, that same day was the incident in Lowell, which turned out to be an airsoft gun, but the police from all over were doing a lot of duty in a very short period of time. I know it was very stressful. I know you were coordinating those, so I thought both the actions taken and the community. I know residents expect communication right away on some of these things, but a lot of it is it's unfolding, and I think they did a good job. I thought the police and others did a really good job of assessing the situation and not overreacting and communicating at an appropriate time. So kudos to those folks for in a very, very difficult situation.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
And I would just make one minor addendum to your report, Colin, and that is for the library book sale, in addition to receiving donations of books, they can certainly use help sorting the books prior to the sale. So anyone who's interested or willing to volunteer at the library to help get ready for that book sale, they would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. All right, item 5B, the road opening permit for Fletcher Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Included in your packet is a letter from DPW Superintendent Jake Zwicker. This is following the submission of a street opening permit requesting to extend the water main service to 24 Fletcher Drive. This is a Class 3 street opening permit, which requires approval from the Select Board. The Engineering Division has performed a preliminary review of the permit and has requested that the Board approve the permit with the following conditions. First being that the DPW requires that the contractor meet with the town to verify the exact location of the water main along Fletcher Drive prior to construction. Second being that the contractor shall file a street opening permit with the DPW and pay all fees prior to work commencing. Third, that prior to the work commencing, a traffic management plan shall be provided and approved by the DPW and the Tyngsborough Police Department. As a part of the plan mentioned above, a sketch shall be provided detailing the anticipated vehicular movements for the duration of the job. The roadway shall be secured at the end of each workday to ensure adequate passage, including conformance to ADA regulations. No person may trim, cut, or remove a public shade tree without the prior permission from the tree warden. Prior to any work commencing in the right-of-way, the contractor must notify the DPW. And finally, an as-built plan shall be provided to the DPW prior to the final closeout of the street opening permit. These are standard conditions that we've applied to every Class 3 permit that the town has issued.
Comments? Select Person Cohen.
The only comment is I'm sure they have to purchase a bond for this. That wasn't in there, but I'm sure that's the way that's normal procedure?
Correct, that's part of the street opening application, you're correct.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Select Person Gilfus?
So this isn't actionable right now. This is just comment from Jake letting us know that when the application comes in, we should approve it.
No, this is actionable right now. There's 2 steps to the process. The class 3, because of our road opening requirements, requires that before any actual fees are collected, that the select board approves it. Because they are actually impacting the infrastructure that the select board has control over. Class 2 and class 1 are less invasive, I guess is the word that I would use, and so they don't require a select board vote. But in order to advance this, I'll need a vote approving the permit tonight.
I don't understand it, but I accept it.
Excellent. Select Person Eldridge?
I have no questions.
I have one question, and it dovetails with Select Person Gilfus's comment about when this might happen. I know way back when in the past, I'm not sure if it still happens, the cross-country team would run on Fletcher Street. And I just want to make sure that that street is safe for them to run on, unless this happens after the cross-country season is over.
This is for, if I'm correct, this is for the construction of a brand-new home on the road, which has moved quite quickly. I don't know how close they are to needing water, but I anticipate that if the board approves this today, the work will commence in the next 2 weeks. As a part of any road opening permit, they're required to make safe the road. It doesn't mean that the road will be in perfect paved condition, but they'll be required to put proper signage. This type of cut also doesn't go directly across the road. It's typically halfway, so the house that is subject to this is on the left if you're going down Fletcher Drive, cemetery's on your right. My understanding, very limited, of the cross-country path is that it starts from inside, there's like a trail. So they would be running on the opposite side, I assume, of where this is.
Yeah.
But either way, it will be properly marked and covered.
And we just may want to let the school know
Absolutely.
that we're going to do that.
I do have a follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thanks. We recently talked about a road opening request, and we denied it because it was in that window of time. How recently was this road paved?
I believe it's at least 10 years, if not more.
Great. I presume that Jake wouldn't have brought this to us if it was a
Correct.
concern. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Eldridge,
You want to entertain a motion?
I would love to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the permit as presented with the conditions outlined herein.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. Thank you. 5-year budget forecast introduction.
It's not from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to just give a quick background, and I'm going to actually give my laptop to David to navigate through this as well. As we've been talking about, David and I participated in a 2 or 3, I think it was a 2-day program with the Massachusetts Department of Revenue that helped municipalities develop a baseline 5-year forecast. We're not going to go into a heck of a lot of detail today, but I wanted David to walk through kind of how this is formulated, and then most importantly, solicit feedback from the board on particular areas you may want us to really drive down on. What I'm hoping that this will do is give us kind of the ability to do some scenario planning. One of the goals that the board has is to talk about staffing, primarily in public safety and public works, and so once we have drilled this down to an area the board feels comfortable knowing the landscape, I think that our goal will be to run scenarios, if we prioritize adding a DPW laborer in X number of years, how we get there. There's really nothing terribly surprising in here. This is high level right now. We're, not scientific is the term that I keep using. And the only thing I want to clarify or kind of drive home is there are still, and this board's aware of them all, several large potential projects that are in various stages of development. For instance, the most promising is 93 Kendall Road, where they've started constructing their smaller building. That will be a nice boost to our new growth numbers, but an even bigger boost will be when they construct their kind of premier building there, which is twice the size. I don't have enough information on that part of the project yet to say for certain that will happen in FY27 or 28. We also know that there's an active discussion about the potential assisted living continuing care campus at the end of Bryant Lane. That will have a very, very positive impact on our new growth number. But as of today, all we know is that they've sold the project. There's been no design drawings. There's been no application to the planning board. And so until we get into the cadence of those regulatory things, it's really hard for me to say with any certainty we'll see this in this year or that year. So we assume a lower than what is probably actual new growth number in many of these years. We also know that there's a potential large warehouse project at 406 Middlesex. I've got a meeting tomorrow actually with an attorney representing a potential developer for that site. It's a different use than what's permitted, so that could have some impact. So there's a lot up in the air. We know, and I've said it to this board many times, that we are running out of places where we're going to see that large new growth, right? Toll Brothers was kind of our big item. We committed that to the middle school. This was the first year. You can see the number continues to carry over year. So as we get more information, we're able to refine that new growth estimate. I shared the new growth number with the board for this year. We were much more conservative than the number ended up being. So all of that is to say that this is not by any means meant to say with any level of certainty that in 2027 these are the numbers. This is more to show all things being the same. This is what the historical trends show us. What we'll need to do now is put in some of the known numbers. Like for instance, 2027 is the last year of 6 of our collective bargaining agreements. So next year I'm going to have to negotiate 6 new CBAs, and that's going to have a big impact on 28, 29, and 30. So I don't want anyone to see this. This, of course, we post your packet well in advance of your meeting. So folks that are following along at home, which I know is hundreds, don't take this as a Bible of any sorts. This is really just, I think, a placeholder for us to start and kind of navigate from there. So I'm going to turn it over to David to kind of walk through this and answer any technical questions. And then I'd be interested in hearing feedback on what areas the board may wish to draw down further on.
Thank you, Town Manager, for declaring this not scientific. I prefer high level, but we'll go with that. So just to show what we're looking at here, if you're using kind of that 3-year average column J, as the middle, to the left of that, 2021 to 2025 are actuals. So those are the revenues and the expenses that have happened. 2026 agrees with the budget that we just approved at town meeting. And then 27 to 31 are the projected amounts. So just, again, using a real high level, there's really only the major funding sources each year. The top calculation is, the prior year tax levy at Prop 2.5, the new growth that Colin was just talking about. The reason that is highlighted in pink is kind of to show what he was saying is there's opportunity there. That 500,000 isn't our 3-year average. You can see the 3-year average is just under 400,000. But the amount that I'm actually clicked on right now for 2026 was 805,000. Okay, so when we proposed the budget, we conservatively estimated the amount that we could to balance the budget, but we don't know the exact number until mid-June. So that number is actually 805. So if I change that number, it'll roll through the calculation going forward. But again, as Colin mentioned, we do have a pipeline of projects, but we just don't know. And you have the state aid. You can see that net state aid year over year really doesn't change a whole lot. I provided budget versus actual for our local receipts because what we try to preach every year is that we're coming in conservative on our revenues. We try to say low on the revenues and high on the expenses, and it's served us pretty well. If you look actual over budget for the last couple of years, I try not to use 21 and 22 because that's kind of in COVID and then the residual of COVID. The 3-year average is based off 23 to 25. So, but just going back to the actual over budget, you can see we're coming in at anywhere between 8 to 10% under. And then if you look over here at the 3-year average, we're actually getting an increase of 10% of the actuals each year. So it's kind of a double whammy there where we're both budgeting under and it's increasing over the years. Now, there's certainly some pieces in there that align with, say, like Toll Brothers, the building permits, or one of the big things was earnings on interest, right? Those amounts plummeted during COVID, and then now they're back to more of a regular amount. Going forward, we pretend, again, I use that pink color because I did the actual being exactly what we budgeted as, so, which was just pretty much exactly what we received last year. So again, trying to remain conservative. Projecting wise, I did use the 3-year average. Other available funds is, our indirect and fringe that we get from our enterprises, the PEG fund, any free cash that we decide to use for the budget, okay? And then down below is the categories of how you break down the expenses. They're pretty self-explanatory. I will say, I did do a little finagling based on a review of certain select person here, because the culture and recreation is just the rec department. So that's why that one is so small, and it looks like it's having a significant increase, but it's also the smallest budget because it's one department. The rest of these, public safety being your police and fire, education includes the assessment, public works is going to be our DPW, and then general government's going to kind of take everything else. I would like to show that this is it says 900,000, but this is the part of the million that the town agreed to contribute towards the middle school.
Yep.
The reason it says 900 instead of a million is we're getting 100,000 from the Lakeview usage.
Yep.
Okay, so that, and where that rolls into above, and this will matter the most for taxpayers, is because the debt exclusion. So the debt exclusion, each year, the payment's gonna be about $2.9 million now that we're paying back now that we're paying for the school, okay? Now, that only says 1.9 because instead of using it as excluded debt and raising the tax levy, from the taxpayers, we put it into the budget, so it's actually 900,000 less that's being taxed. And you can prove that out if you scroll all the way to the right. In 2031, the only excluded debt that we have on the books, once the elementary school is off, is just the middle school. So the excluded debt there lines up with down in the expenses, the exact amount that's in our budget that's projected. I know it's kind of tough to follow, but I'm just saying that there's some levers in there. If we lower that contribution, that can lessen the burden on the general fund budget as well. You can see right in the middle, I highlighted in yellow, revenues, 3 years, we're going up about 4.5%. I mean, we got the Prop 2.5, that's 2.5 on your real estate taxes. You get the new growth, and then it's really just a little growth in local receipts. It's not keeping up with expenses, which meets expectations. I mean, when you can only increase by 4%, but it's nearly 5.5% for expenses, eventually, there's going to be a deficit. And again, that's not to raise any alarms. There is options. We do have, again, new growth. As I said, we can update this number right now. So we're not to say that there's, override in the future. That's not what we're saying. We're trying to project into the future, just kind of on the path that we are currently on. And again, that's based off of that 3-year average from 2023 to 2025. Generally speaking, those are salary increases, because we kind of level fund with expenses when we're managing the budget. So, like Colin said, new collective bargaining agreement can certainly change that. But going forward, that's what we use these percentages to project.
Good. Thank you. I will open up to questions from the board. Select Person Cohen.
Yeah, starting all of them today.
I am consistent if nothing else.
You are consistent, my man. So, as stated earlier, I mean, this isn't scientific, I mean, clearly if it was scientific, you wouldn't be in, municipal government finances, you'd be in the stock market, right? This is something we have to keep working on. We always do the 5-year budget, and usually when we go through this, I like to think of it as much more certainty in the first 3 years. The 4th and 5th year, it always becomes more and more difficult. But it's really important that we keep going through this, keep going through different models, and keep learning from this. So, and I think this is a good iteration, and I always keep expecting more iterations to come. And as you said, as we get more numbers, we plug them in. We start learning more and more. Hopefully, we learn from the past, so and we're implementing this into the 5-year budget. And but good pass at this. I appreciate the work. Thank you very much.
Select Person Bilkus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, David, that you mentioned right at the end, if the expenses are outpacing the revenue, obviously you get to a position where you would run a deficit. I'm curious, just looking at the numbers of the 3-year average, what happened with the culture and recreation?
Well, so.
What does that number represent?
So that culture and recreation is just straight rec department. So.
But like, what's with the jump from 220,000 to 1.2 million?
Oh, see, I apologize. I updated the sheet since we've, so if you look up at I updated it. It's different than what you're looking at on your paper.
Okay.
So, but I had mentioned that earlier because
Just throw that out.
what happened was, no, it was my error.
No.
Because what happened was there's different buckets that the DLS, the budgeting workshop we went to, uses as opposed to what we use for our budget. So comparing the bucket of culture and rec, that included vet, library, and one other department, whereas we have not, we had it in Health and Human Services, so it's just a bucket issue. I updated it because of that confusion,
Okay.
but I apologize, it was done later than you were able to see.
So the percentage,
So if
Is
you're
that still
looking
accurate?
what select person is pointing out here, so there still is a 13% increase. What we did was, it was both for watering the athletic fields and mowing the athletic fields.
Between the biggest jump that you'll see between 24 and 25, in 25, in 24, we mowed the fields using internal staff. In 25, we hired a contractor again. In 26, we've terminated that contract and have brought it back in-house. So that's a $40,000 increase right off the top. Because these are actuals, we had lower than typical numbers in terms of the expenditures on watering the fields in 23 and 24, whereas 25 was the year that we did most of the work on the irrigation project. And so on top of the capital funding, we used a portion of the watering budget to initialize the system and things like that. So we spent more than in previous years, which again goes to speak to how this isn't, we won't continue to see year over year 13% increases. This formula just takes that 3-year average and carries it over.
Okay, I realize that the PDF that I'm looking at, the numbers are way different from that, so I'll review this. No questions at this point. Thank you.
Select Person Eldridge.
Yeah, few items. One, as Select Person Cohen indicated, the first few years, try to be as accurate as you can. Once you're looking out beyond that, it's difficult both on the revenue side and the cost side. However, I think the key thing is when we have expenses that are going up more than the 2.5%, we really need to look at those. We can't keep doing that. Otherwise, we'll be in situations like other towns are in. As far as helping with transparency and helping to go through this process, some suggestions. The areas on expenses, I think that maps to the pie chart that we were doing in the buckets that were there. However, it doesn't map to what's in town meeting and the warrant articles for that grouping. So I think we either need to have a crosswalk where you can say this is where this is, or, because while this is great for us and all those things, we need to make sure that residents understand where all those things are. So we might need to either make a shift and have them both on the same thing, or figure out how we make it easier for them to read, because I was trying to see where for the 26 budget, I was trying to map it to what we had agreed to in town meeting, and I was struggling. Another suggestion is in the areas where you've got budgeted local receipts, rather than having one line item, you might want to either make it so you can drill down and to see what those are, because there are some that are fairly fixed, we kind of know what those are, and then there's some where you have some fluctuation, and that might give you a better idea to see what some of those levers are. The other thing, and I think you're doing this, is the 3-year average percentages being projected across.
Sorry.
What I would suggest you might want to look at is, rather than having one number that goes through to all 5 years, is to have an incremental for each year in each of those items, so that you can kind of see, because it might be that we do a contract, for example, and I don't know if people are going to be able to hear it if I turn that way. But you might have a situation where in one year, we don't have any, it's only a 2% increase because the CBA is still in effect for those, but then we have a new agreement, and now that next year, rather than it being 2%, it might be, we got a 4% catch up and then a 2% on there. So you might want to consider having for each of those years what an increase might be for each one, because I have a feeling those are levers you're going to want to play with and sit there and say, you know what? Because like the recreation one, that's a small number, but you're not going to do 13% every year on that. But you might have something where it's okay, it's going to be 3% or it's going to be 4% or whatever. And you might want to be able to navigate those. So that's what I would suggest is, rather than pushing those across, because I did that and looked at some of these numbers, because when I look at numbers, I look at them very literally. And I fell off the chair when I saw the negative numbers in 29 and all that. So I had to make sure that I understood what they were. And so if you don't push some of the, like even the general government going at 7% a year, that's not sustainable. If we're going to try to have that general government number, if that's going up 7% a year, it's not going to be sustainable. So
I agree.
So I think it'd be easier on you if we just do some of those things. Because when I did, it was like, okay, now if I do some of these numbers, rather than being 7% going across, it was 7% before, but in 27 it was 4 and then 5 or something like that. And the total numbers came down and it was very manageable. I think it would be good for your blood pressure, because I know it was good for mine. So those would be the things, that's what I would recommend, is help with some of the transparency for residents, that they can interpret some of these things. Give yourself some flexibility to do some of the scenario planning, and look out at some of those items. And then on the local receipts, I would break that down, because I think we're gonna want to look at those on the revenue side and just see how we're tracking on some of those. And new growth, be as conservative, don't change. Keep being conservative on those numbers, because I think we have to be. That was it.
Thank you. My only question has to do with the education budget. It's the big bogey in the whole thing. What do we have for an assumption for their growth? I know in the past, they had agreed to 2.7% growth, but I think that they're looking for a reset at this point now going forward. So what have we assumed in this 5-year plan for that?
This assumes the trend. We have not come to a new agreement yet, not for a lack of trying. We just haven't gotten that far in our conversations. I expect that over the course of the next few weeks, Dr. Flanagan and I will be sitting down with David and Joe on the school side, to figure something out. I think they've expressed in that tri-board meeting that 2.7 may not be the appropriate number for them, and I think we've said we'd like to see it maybe somewhere between 2.7 and 3, closer to. So I think we've got some work to do on that,
But that's not.
but
built
that's
in.
not a factor here yet.
Okay, all right, because, you know, a small change in percentage on that.
On that
number
one will
has
be a big difference,
huge,
yeah.
Yes.
huge effect. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, I think as a board, we look at this as just directionally, where are we going? We're not trying to drill down any specific number, particularly after the second or third year. But, you know, I applaud the effort and just, you know, we keep working at it, right? We keep refining it, keep making as many changes to it to make it transparent so that we can see the trends, and we just use this as a guide.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
5E, which is the update of the schematic design of the new fire department headquarters.
If I could do 5D
D.
first.
Oh, I guess you could.
This is just, this is no action required. This is just simply for the board's awareness. This is the proposed FY27 capital and operating budget schedule. As I've said in prior years, this is just what we're holding ourselves to. We know that some of those times fluctuate. You'll see many of these dates carry over from the board's meeting schedule. You know, we put the information on the side. This has us starting a couple of the processes a little bit earlier. Capital asset is in September for a start date. Last year was the first week in October. We plan on talking with capital asset in the beginning of October about funding scenarios for 2027. So nothing dramatically different here than we saw last year. There is the weird holiday with Patriots Day falling at the end of April. So in all likelihood, we'll be asking you to approve the budget and post the warrant a week earlier than you're actually you have to. And we kind of ran into something like that last year as well. But again, no action required tonight. This calendar or this schedule holds 2 tri-board meetings again. I think this year it'll probably be most helpful because we'll need a resolution on what that agreed upon increase is
Yes.
between the school department. And based on your feedback tonight, we'll refine the 5-year forecast baseline, and David will be arranging a meeting with the finance committee so that they can get their eyes on it as well. And this will be something that we'll present back regularly to the board.
I look forward to that. Thank you. All right, how about 5E then?
I would love to take that now. So I just wanted to give the board an update on our efforts to complete a schematic design of a new fire department headquarters. The funding for this project was approved by town meeting in May. Last month, we received 5 responses to our request for qualifications, and the designer selection committee met last week to narrow down 3 finalists. The committee will interview those finalists next week and then recommend one to me for the award. In the meantime, as this board is acutely aware, the future of the Winslow School remains in flux. As we speak, the Community Preservation Committee has a contract with an architectural firm that has already completed a condition assessment of the Winslow School, which has been shared with this board, with the Community Preservation Committee, and posted online. And they are now working on providing us a cost estimate to restore the entire exterior of the building. This project is the result of a request by the Historical Commission to use CPC funding to restore the entire exterior. You may remember that the Historical Commission appeared before you last year and presented a plan to restore the entire outside of the building, and then they proposed 3 phases for working on the inside of the building to ultimately develop into what they described was a community space. I expect that we'll have cost estimates in the next month, and the Community Preservation Committee will use that information to determine whether or not they feel it's appropriate and financially feasible to advance a funding request to town meeting. At the same time, the scope of work for the fire station schematic design contemplates the new building being on the Winslow site. As I have repeatedly indicated to this board and to CPC and Historical, the ideal location on the site is where the current Winslow School sits. But the schematic design could be implemented anywhere on the site if the building was to remain where it stands. Given that town meeting in May of 2023 approved CPC funding to demo the additions to the school and restore only the exterior of the original schoolhouse, we also included an option in the design contract for the selected designer to incorporate the original schoolhouse as administrative offices in the new fire station. The way that we've worded the proposal is that they absolutely have to give us a schematic design for a new build, but we left the option in there when we award the contract for them to also do a schematic design, assuming that we use just that part of the building. And again, the only reason we even listed it in there is because there was a town meeting, that was the only clear town meeting vote that happened on the Winslow School, which was to take down the sides, the additions, and keep the original. So our thinking was, if history repeated itself and town meeting was inclined to maintain just that original schoolhouse, could we work them in together? And I think that the designer selection committee will have an opportunity to talk to our top 3 finalists about that at their meetings next week. At your next meeting, I will need input from the board as to whether or not it wants to have that work actually be completed. So before I award the contract, I'll need to inform the designer if we're going to expect that second schematic design. I know that this is a third rail subject, and I may regret bringing this up tomorrow morning, but I did want to get some initial feedback and suggest that perhaps the select board invite the historical commission to attend one of your future meetings, at least so that we're all on the same page about what is happening. I certainly don't pretend to think that in one meeting we'll all be on the same page about the future of the Winslow School. To be clear, Chief Russell has expressed an interest in at least looking into whether or not that building can be a part of it. We know there are limitations. We know that it's a really old building. We know because the designers that did the space assessment told us, and it was included in a report, that we need to build the highest sturdiness of a building for a public safety building. There's a building code for it that escaped my mind, and it will cost a lot of money to upgrade this old school into that, and so there may be some cost challenges to it, but I didn't think it was appropriate for me to completely throw out the fact that town meeting had at least made a vote on the building. So I don't need anything specific from the board tonight. Again, at your September 22nd meeting, I'll need to know whether or not we include it. It won't have a dramatic cost impact because the schematic design doesn't get down into the very fine details, right? So it's not like they're gonna have to do new surveys or do, you know, a heck of a lot of different cost estimating. It will be different, but some parts will be the same. So I guess, you know, I'm looking to see if the board has any feedback, if the board's amenable to inviting the historical commission. For what it's worth, I think we all know the historical commission has and continues to advocate for the restoration of the entire building. I don't know that they'd be amenable to, you know, what was voted on by town meeting, but I think having a conversation may be beneficial. So now that I've dropped that grenade, I'm gonna just step back and see what you all have to say.
Glad I'm right next to you.
Select Person Cohen, start us off.
So yeah, I think it's important that we do talk to historical and get their ideas. We have had them in here before, and we should have them in here again and continue the conversation. I mean, this board has been very clear, you know, that the next spring town meeting, you know, we expect, or we're at least planning for, to start voting on the new fire station. We have a lot of work to do. We'll put a plan together. I'd actually even like to start the plan right now, Colin. I'd like to get the community going into the fire station and start scheduling some time events, because I think that's one of the most important things, is for the community, you know, from when they walk through there, you make the determination. Do you feel this is a fire station you can be proud of in Tyngsborough, or do you feel we should have a new fire station? And so I think that's one of the first steps, is to let everybody understand if you know, what they feel about the current fire station. You know, as it does relate to, you know, having part of the Winslow School part of the fire station, the consultants that we've talked to so far, when we mention that, they kind of look at us like, you know, you have to meet certain standards, and it's to put an old building or the structure or a part of a structure of an old building into a new fire station. You have to be at code. Everybody says, well, oh, we'll just have it as the administrative office. And we've talked to them about that. No. Code is code. The whole building has to be up to code. It would be a significant cost increase to be able to do that. We'll continue the conversations. We're going to meet with 3 to 5 more, and that's one of our questions for them. But the first impressions we've gotten is it would be a significantly increased cost. And of course, it's going to cost us more to have them design an old building into a new building also. And I think that cost would be pretty significant also, especially you know, put in bid documents to go out to bid. So that's my, my quick ones. That's what I got.
Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having come from the 250 Middlesex Road Committee, which was really my entry into Tyngsborough town politics and what inspired me to run for select board, this has such a soft spot for me. I went into that committee work feeling really neutral and wasn't sure if we should keep the Winslow School or if we should demolish it or restore it or what that might look like. And through talking to residents, and certainly I think evidenced by the vote at town meeting, there is a desire to maintain a degree of historical character in town, especially in the town center. And I think we probably, you know, in hindsight, we probably fell short with the way that we phrased the warrant article, because I think it did put residents in a situation where it was really, you know, vote to remove the additions or tear it down. And so there certainly were people who voted to tear down the additions because they wanted it restored or didn't want to see it demolished. I hate to see Winslow essentially be pitted against the fire station, but the reality is I don't think that residents have the appetite for both projects. The costs associated with renovating Winslow to a place where it could be used as a community center, like was proposed by Historical, I think is likely not something that residents are going to support. And knowing that the fire station is more of a safety priority, and I would say a more urgent need, that needs to be where our focus is. And I think residents would agree, definitely, in seeing the current state of the firehouse. It's not acceptable, so that has to be actioned. I think the idea of having the Winslow School, the center, be included in either the administrative buildings or, you know, whatever that looks like, I think that sounds very nice theoretically, but I think Mr. Cohane has raised that the feasibility of that is quite different than having these be two separate projects. And again, I don't think that we really have the budget to do them as two separate projects. So, you know, in a lot of ways, it's a lose-lose-lose. It's really difficult to have everyone's desires met here. The only thing that I think is some degree of, I don't know, like brings me some solace is in the conversations with residents in our work with 250 Middlesex, it sounded to me like it wasn't necessarily that residents needed the physical Winslow School with its wood and its stone as it currently exists to be the thing that is retained. But for many residents, it sounded like maintaining some historical character, having the charm of a colonial New England town center, which many of our neighboring communities have, I think that is what people were really seeking. And I know that it's possible for us to incorporate elements of that type of design and architectural style in the design of the fire station. And I think that that's probably the direction that is most economically feasible and I think would satisfy the majority of residents who really felt strongly about maintaining Winslow. And so whatever that looks like, I think in the schematic designs or, you know, when we get to a place where we're doing the actual architectural diagrams, I think having sort of a colonial schoolhouse feel that matches with First Parish and Old Town Hall and just feels cohesive, I think is totally doable. And I think that that would I think that would probably satisfy the needs of most of our residents. So that was a long drawn out way of saying, I think it's worth having historical come to us. I hope that they can meet us in some sort of compromise, you know, potentially going this way. I think that it's really unlikely that residents are going to support the idea of funding the renovations that they're proposing, that historical is proposing. So hopefully we can find a way forward and not need to do a ton of additional engagement with residents about something that we've already, you know, rehashed many times. But I agree. I think we should focus our attention on getting buy-in from the public about the fire station, because that's really priority right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Select Person Eldridge.
Ditto, no. I thought that was very well said. You covered a lot of fantastic areas. Totally agree with the journey that you took us on. I'm very empathetic to the history. I think maintaining the character of our center is critical. I think that just as critical is maintaining the safety of our fire department and making sure that what they have is appropriate for their needs. I would add on to what Select Person Cohen had talked about, not only getting people to see the fire station. There's opportunity at the health fair, the health and safety fair, later this month. You can see the trucks. Talk to our firefighters. Talk to the people who have to be in those types of situations and ask them about their experiences. I've been very, very thankful for Chief Russell's, he's open, he's flexible, he's sitting there saying, we need to do what's right for my people, and I want to make sure that what we do works for residents, and he's like, I'm not closing any doors. So I think he's been fantastic with his flexibility. I do think we have a sense of urgency. I think that absolutely having historical come in, this board has always been welcoming to others and to share their opinions, whether they agree with us or not. I do agree, though, you know, we just looked at some of the financial numbers, and I just, as much as we'd love to say, I wish I had unlimited funds to do something, I do think we have limited space. I think we have limited funds. And I think that if we have to make some difficult decisions, which we will, my opinion is that I think public safety comes first. And I think that the only thing that I would like to have is for our next meeting to add in that additional schematic.
Yeah.
Let's get an idea what that cost is, because I don't think it's trivial. I think it's one of those things, when you try to do a schematic, it's not a detailed design or anything like that, but it is enough. I think we should understand what the costs are going to be on that, because, you know, we could have 15 different schematic designs, and I don't think that's going to get us to where we need to be. So I think we should have some of that. But I think having historical come in, I think starting to engage with residents and making sure that they understand all the details. I would love to say this is a very easy decision either way, but it is kind of it's difficult, and we're going to have to make some choices and some sacrifices in there. But, you know, as you've both eloquently said before me, I think the items are on the table. Let's continue to move forward. I think I've been pretty clear how I stand, so I think we have enough to proceed for our next meeting.
Thank you. And I will echo what everyone here has said. I agree with Select Person Cohen. We need to start getting people sensitized to the issue, and the way to start that is visitations, right? I think this nut is big enough. Just building the fire station, if you took Winslow completely off the table, just getting the fire station built is going to be enough of a challenge, right? It's going to be a huge challenge because as you say, Mr. Eldridge, we don't know what that cost is, but it's not going to be cheap. And I would go further. You know, you were saying priority number one in the town is public safety. I'd say priority number two is fiscal stability. And so we need to balance the two of those. And trying to balance the two of those and preserve the entire Winslow School project might be near impossible in the near term, right? And I think Select Person Gilfus had mentioned, you know, perhaps you maintain, you preserve the memory of that Winslow School by building a replica of it, a facade.
The facade, which residents did support.
Right, right, and there are
Yes.
a number of people who said that, and you name it the Winslow Fire Station, you know. There are ways to preserve those memories. In fact, the library is starting an oral history project in February that'll go along those lines. So I think we're all on board that there are a couple of challenges, but we have to look at it with our eyes wide open and make some difficult decisions. We're gonna make difficult decisions. The Historical Commission is gonna have to make some difficult decisions. The town as a whole is gonna make some difficult decisions. But, you know, we have all the facts when we have all the facts on the table, it'll be clear to everyone what we can afford or not afford. So I think we should get them in here, get them to talk to us, and let's just, you know, like I say, go at it with our eyes wide open of what we can do and what's feasible to do.
The one thing, Mr. Chair, you made a point that that was helpful, and I wanted to just clarify. While we talk about the construction of the fire station, that is naturally, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that would have to be funded with an additional debt exclusion. While CPC could cover the cost of renovating the outside, it would have to borrow money, but it would be under CPC. One of the things that we often leave out in these conversations is the ongoing maintenance once the building is constructed. Are we staffing it? Are we paying for utilities? Are we paying to maintain it? Unless you come up with an ironclad guaranteed source of revenue, whereas another group comes in and leases the building, or you have so much rental revenue that you don't need the money, there is beyond just spending the CPC money to repair the building, I just want us all to be cognizant of that. Once the building is repaired, if that's the route people go, eventually the operating budget, which is your taxes outside of CPC, has to go up. You know, we can't keep adding buildings and parcels without matching the staff and the resources for cleaning, maintaining, utilities, etc. So just to point out there, there are a lot of bigger picture conversations around the fiscal piece that we have to be aware of.
Right. And when I say fiscal piece, I'm also talking at the individual taxpayer level, their fiscal piece, right?
Right.
And there's a limit that they can only reach, so.
And Mr. Chair, you know, as Colin was talking about, you know, there is discussion at the CPC and probably the Historical Commission about trying to fund, you know, renovating the outside of that building, right? But when you really look at the CPC funds, if they renovate the outside of the building, when we renovate the inside, it's gonna be a tax increase to the residents. And it's gonna be a significant tax increase because it takes a lot of money to restore a historical building. There's very few companies that do it, and it's in, you know, we'll see when the report comes out, but there's a lot of challenges with the condition of the building. So it would be a significant tax increase to finalize the Winslow School. There's no question about that. And clearly we know it will be a big increase to have a fire station too. And as was discussed earlier, doing both of them together, that's not gonna fly. And the residents, just as we are gonna have to do, are gonna have to make, you know, what is most important to you. You know, we can't have everything. What are the limited things we can do with the limited funds that we have? And the limited pocketbooks that we all have in our own personal finances, what is really attainable there? That's all.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I mean, we'll get into a lot of it, but the only other thing I would add relative to the Winslow, I've had concerns of, if you just renovate the outside of a building, that doesn't work, because you need to have the inside protected. You need the HVAC
Right.
in order to maintain that, you know, that's there. So just wrapping things up or putting siding on it and kicking the can down the road, I don't think really gets us any further than we've been for the last 24 years or whatever. So we're going to get into some of those difficult discussions, but I think from my perspective, we have what we need to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Loizal.
Excellent. The last item is just, I don't need any, there's no action required, and I won't go into a heck of a lot of detail unless the board wants me to,
No.
but I wanted to I figured that was the answer. I wanted to just, at your last meeting, we approved the goals, long-term and short-term, and there was a discussion about how do we make sure that we're working toward them and how can we measure it. So for each goal, I identified the departments that were involved, and I identified the immediate, if not, in some cases, I went all the way to conclusion, next steps. And so what I anticipate I'll do for your next meeting, and we'll update you monthly on, is break some of these down into timelines. So maybe I have some that are quarter 1, quarter 2, working with different departments so that every time I come, once a month I can say to you, okay, under your long-range goal about the traffic improvement plan, we've already done 1 and 2, and kind of report back the progress. So I'm not gonna go through each one. This has been online. I'll update it on the select board's page where your goals are, but I wanted to show you that we took what you said, we've assigned it to different groups. We've even identified the other stakeholders like Community Preservation Committee, Rec Committee, Historical Conservation, so that there's a clear public input process that will go into all of these as well.
Thank you for making them check boxes, Colin. This is like, it's gonna be so easy for you to report on it. It's really great.
Thank you. Select board reports. Select person Cohen.
Board reports. I guess I'm not gonna talk about the goals, huh? I guess I.
No,
didn't
that's what
want-
it is, you can.
I didn't want to anyway. I'm willing to go to select, I'm going right to report. I like it.
Thank you.
The only thing I was just gonna add a little bit, as the fall season is approaching us, I know a lot of people have really enjoyed Ironwood Park. I see a lot of people walking at Ironwood Park, an immense number of people walking Ironwood Park. But I also know that in the fall, our hiking trails get a lot of action also. So I did go through, I went through our big ones, Sherburne, Long Pond, and Shady Glade, and helped clean those up. So they're ready for everybody. If you love to do fall hiking, they're all ready. I'll just talk about the Long Pond for 1 second. And so if the trail along the pond, as you saw, was a little bit grown over, that's been cleared out now. Just so everybody knows, there is a trail right along Long Pond, right against the pond. There's a handicap accessible trail right there. I've seen mothers with their child in strollers strolling down and hanging out at Long Pond. People fishing at Long Pond. We have a lot of accessible land, and it's open to all. And please enjoy it this fall. I'm looking forward to the fall.
Thank you. Select person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I really have anything.
It's okay.
We were thorough. Things are doing great. Thanks.
I disagree. Select person Eldridge.
No, just kidding. A couple weeks ago, had a great experience at the block party. So I think a lot of people talked about it. We had a tent, and we had folks got to speak with some folks. Fireworks were fantastic. The event, I think everybody had a great time. Fantastic event. Top notch. Very proud to be from Tyngsborough as I'm sitting there watching the fireworks and the people enjoying themselves and all the people that it took to get to that. I want to rewind, go a little bit further back. I had a chance to tour the middle school, and that was fantastic. For the residents who overwhelmingly supported the middle school, what we have is a building that's appropriate for us. It was not ostentatious. It was not, the offices were right size. They were appropriate for a school. The learning places are fantastic, top notch. We talked about it here in that, we wanted to make sure that we thanked everybody who did all that work, and definitely want to thank the residents. But if you didn't have a chance to go through and tour the school, find some time to go through and see what's there. It is a fantastic building for the community. And when I think about what we're going to need to do for the fire department and anything else, I think that's the way that we have to go. It's appropriate, right? It meets the needs, it meets everything that is needed, but it's not overkill on those, and it's right for Tyngsborough. That building is right for Tyngsborough. So that was a really great day to be from Tyngsborough, because I was proud of, I think the block party everybody knows about and all that, but to tour the school and to see that, it was sitting there going, you know what? We put up with a lot of grief. I'm not going to use the other term that we have with the little guy here. But sometimes it's worth it, and that was a good day for Tyngsborough. So there's my report.
Thank you. Last year, when you talked about the Civic Leadership Academy, I was so impressed that I said, we really should build this into the curriculum of the schools. And so I'm going to reiterate that point yet again, because I just feel that with all the things that we teach our children about how federal government is run, how state government is run, one thing that's lacking is how our local government is run. And if there's a way that we could build that in, not necessarily, I don't know how, whether it's a formal block within the curriculum or some type of a presentation that gets done for kids at a particular grade. However we do, we should be creative. I really think that would benefit the people in the town, the kids in the town, just to make them aware of how things work or don't work.
Absolutely.
So that is my...
Another excellent idea.
That's what they pay me the big bucks for. Yes.
Excellent idea.
Right.
When Eric and I were at the table at the block party, we had two young, probably teenager tweens, stop by and ask us what the select board does. And I was delighted to just turn to select person Eldred and let him answer that. And I have to say, it was very humbling to try to make what we do interesting to 12-year-olds.
And I struggled.
You did as good of a job as you could have, but I think you're right. They don't know what we're up to, so.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Good work
All
to
right.
them there.
Thank you, everyone. We need to go to executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that we go into executive session under exemption 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Town manager.
Second,
Let's do a roll call vote on
In
this.
favor?
in favor.
In favor.
I am also in favor. Good night, everyone.